The zipper's rasp sliced through the silence of the Appalachian night, a sound so sharp it yanked me from the edge of sleep. My heart slammed against my ribs as I bolted upright, clutching my sleeping bag like a shield. Alone in the wilderness, miles from anyone, I hadn't expected company, certainly not the shadow of a stranger at my tent's entrance. I'd come to this remote corner of the Smoky Mountains to escape. Nashville's noise, its bars, its expectations, its suffocating normalcy had been clawing at me for months. At 25, Ethan Harper, was unraveling. My family's whispers about my choices, my friends' awkward silences when I mentioned dating guys, and the weight of a city that felt too small for who I was had driven me here. A week of solo camping was supposed to be my reset, a chance to breathe without judgment. I'd picked the most secluded trail I could find, a place where the pines whispered secrets and the stars didn't care who you loved. But now, as the tent flap parted, the stars seemed to hold their breath. A man's silhouette loomed against the faint glow of my dying campfire. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his face half hidden in shadow. My hand fumbled for the pocket knife under my pillow, my pulse a deafening drumbeat. "Who's there?" I managed, my voice cracking like dry wood. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, low and urgent, his words tumbling out like they'd been held back too long. "I need your help. Please." His voice wasn't threatening, it was desperate, raw, like someone running from something worse than the dark. I froze, the knife still in my grip. Every instinct screamed to drive him off, to protect the fragile solitude I'd carved out here. But his eyes, catching the firelight, held something I couldn't ignore: fear. Yes, but also a flicker of something deeper, something that felt like a mirror to my own buried truths. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steadier now, though my heart still raced. He shifted closer, just enough for the light to reveal his face, late 20s, maybe, with sharp cheekbones and dark eyes that seemed to carry 1,000 unspoken stories. His jacket was torn, his hands trembling slightly as he raised them, palms out, like a surrender. "My name's Caleb," he said. "Two can't go back. They're looking for me." His words were a punch, each one landing heavier than the last. "I saw your fire. I didn't know where else to go." "Who's looking for you?" I asked, my grip on the knife loosening despite myself. The forest around us was silent, save for the crackle of the fire and the distant hoot of an owl. It felt like the world had shrunk to just us, two strangers bound by this moment. He hesitated, his gaze dropping to the ground. "People who don't understand," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "People who think they can fix me." The weight of his words hit me like a stone. I knew that tone, that quiet defiance masking a wound. I'd heard it in my own voice, late at night, when I tried to explain to my parents why I couldn't be the son they wanted. I lowered the knife, my hands shaking now, not from fear, but from recognition. "What's your name?" he asked, his eyes searching mine, like he was trying to decide if I was a threat or a lifeline. "Ethan," I said, the word feeling like a confession. "Why are they after you?" "Caleb." He swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. "Because I love someone they don't approve of," he said. "And they'd rather see me broken than let me be who I am." The air between us thickened, charged with the kind of truth that changes everything. I didn't know Caleb, didn't know his story, but in that moment, I felt the pull of a shared struggle, the weight of being seen. I gestured to the ground beside the fire. "Sit," I said. "Tell me." He hesitated, then sank to the dirt, his shoulders slumping like he'd been carrying the world. The firelight danced across his face, revealing a bruise along his jaw. Faint but unmistakable. My stomach twisted. Whoever was after him wasn't just disapproving, they were dangerous. "I didn't mean to drag you into this," he said, staring into the flames. "But I've been running for 2 days. I'm out of options." I leaned forward, the cold night air biting at my skin. "Start from the beginning," I said. "What happened?" Caleb's story spilled out in fragments, like pieces of a shattered mirror. He'd grown up in a small town in Tennessee, where being gay wasn't just frowned upon, it was a sin to be stamped out. He'd fallen in love with a man named Ryan, a quiet artist who'd made him feel alive for the first time. But when their relationship came to light, Ryan's family, powerful, connected, and fiercely traditional, had turned on them. Threats turned to violence, and Caleb had fled, leaving Ryan behind to protect him. Now, Ryan's brothers were hunting him, determined to fix him or worse. "They think they're saving my soul," Caleb said, his voice bitter. "But they're just tearing me apart." I listened, my own memories clawing their way to the surface. My father's cold silence when I came out, my mother's tears, the way my friends drifted away when I stopped hiding who I was. I'd thought camping alone would help me escape that pain. But here it was, sitting across from me in the form of a stranger who felt anything but. "Why come here?" I asked. "Why me?" Caleb looked at me, his eyes steady despite the exhaustion etched into his face. "I saw your fire," he said simply. "It was the only light in the dark." His words lodged in my chest, heavy and warm. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. Instead, I tossed another log onto the fire, watching the sparks spiral into the night. The forest felt alive around us, a witness to this fragile moment of trust. "We need a plan," I said finally. "If they're after you, they'll find this spot eventually." Caleb nodded, his expression grim. "I know. But I don't want to run anymore. I need to get to Ryan. I need to know he's okay." The determination in his voice stirred something in me, a resolve I hadn't felt in months. I'd come out here to hide, to lick my wounds. But maybe this was bigger than me. Maybe helping Caleb wasn't just about him, it was about proving to myself that I could still fight for something. "Okay," I said, my voice firm. "We'll figure this out. Together." Caleb's eyes widened, like he hadn't expected that. "You don't even know me," he said softly. "I know enough," I replied, meeting his gaze. "And I'm not letting you face this alone." The fire crackled between us, a small beacon in the vast, unforgiving night. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone either. The forest was quieter than it should have been, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Caleb and I sat by the fire, the warmth doing little to ease the chill of his story. His words about Ryan, about the life he'd left behind, hung in the air like smoke, curling around us and binding us in a way I hadn't anticipated. I glanced at him, his profile sharp against the flickering flames. The bruise on his jaw seemed darker now, a stark reminder of the danger he was in. "How far behind you are they?" I asked, keeping my voice low, as if the night itself might betray us. Caleb's hands tightened into fists. "I don't know. A day, maybe less. They've got trucks, dogs. They know these woods better than I do." He looked at me, his dark eyes searching. "You don't have to do this, Ethan. You can walk away." I shook my head, the decision already made. "I'm not walking away. Not now." The words felt like a vow, not just to him, but to myself. I'd spent too long running from my own truth, hiding in Nashville's shadows, pretending I could outrun the judgment. Caleb's fight felt like mine, too. He gave a small nod, like he was afraid to believe me but didn't have a choice. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely audible. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a crumpled photo, its edges worn from being handled too much. He smoothed it out and handed it to me. The picture showed Caleb and another man, Ryan. I assumed standing in a sunlit field, laughing. Ryan was slighter than Caleb, with messy blonde hair and a smile that seemed to light up the world. They looked happy, unguarded, like they'd found a moment of peace in a world that didn't want them to have it. "He's why I'm still here," Caleb said, his voice thick. "I promised him I'd come back, no matter what." I handed the photo back, my throat tight. "He's lucky to have you," I said, and I meant it. There was something fierce in Caleb's love, something I envied. I'd never had that, not yet. My relationships had been fleeting, shadowed by fear of being too open, too real. "We need to move," I said, standing and brushing the dirt from my jeans. "If they're close, we can't stay here. Not with the fire giving us away." Caleb nodded, tucking the photo away like it was his last anchor to hope. "There's a ranger station about 10 miles north," he said. "If we can get there, maybe we can call for help." 10 miles through these woods at night. I raised an eyebrow, but my tone was light. "You're not selling me on an easy road trip." He cracked a small smile, the first I'd seen, and it changed. His face made him look younger, less haunted. "I never said it'd be easy," he said, "but I've got no one else." We packed up quickly, dousing the fire and burying the embers. My tent came down in minutes, stuffed into my backpack alongside the essentials: water, a flashlight, the knife. Caleb traveled light, with just a small pack and a look of determination that made me believe he could outrun anything. The trail was barely a path, overgrown and treacherous in the dark. We moved in silence, the crunch of leaves under our boots the only sound. Every snap of a twig made my heart lurch, my eyes darting to the shadows. Caleb stayed close, his presence steadying me even as my mind raced with questions. Who were these people after him? How far would they go? And why did I feel like this moment, this night, was about to change everything? After an hour, we stopped to catch our breath by a small stream, its water glinting under the moonlight. Caleb knelt to refill his bottle, and I watched him, struck by how natural he seemed out here, despite everything. "You've done this before," I said, more observation than question. "Camping." He glanced up, water dripping from his hands. "Yeah. Ryan and I used to come out here when things got bad. It was our escape." The mention of Ryan brought a pang I couldn't explain. Maybe it was the way Caleb's voice softened when he said his name. Or maybe it was the reminder of what I'd been missing, a connection that ran deeper than fear. "What's he like?" I asked, sitting on a nearby rock. Caleb paused, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "He's bright. Like, he sees the world in colors I didn't know existed. He paints, writes poetry, makes you feel like you're more than you are." His smile faded. "But he's not as strong as he seems. That's why I had to leave Vito, keep him safe." I nodded, understanding more than I wanted to. "My family's not like that," I said, surprising myself. "They don't get it, but they don't chase me down. They just pretend I'm someone else." Caleb looked at me, his gaze piercing. "That's its own kind of cage," he said quietly. I didn't respond, but his words settled into me, heavy and true. We sat there for a moment, the stream's murmur filling the silence. Then, a distant sound, a low, Guttural hum made us both freeze. It was faint but unmistakable, the growl of an engine. Somewhere in the darkness. "They're closer than I thought," Caleb whispered, his face pale. "We need to go? Now." We scrambled to our feet, adrenaline spiking. The forest, once a refuge, felt like a trap closing around us. As we moved, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about Caleb's escape anymore. It was about both of us, 12 strangers running towards something bigger than ourselves, something worth fighting for. The engine's growl faded, then surged again. Closer now, a predator stalking through the trees. Caleb's hand gripped my arm, his fingers digging in as we crouched behind a cluster of pines. My breath came in shallow bursts, the cold air stinging my lungs. "They've got ATVs," Caleb whispered, his voice tight. "They'll cover ground faster than we can." I nodded, my mind racing. 10 miles to the ranger station felt like 100 now, with the uneven terrain and the weight of my pack dragging at my shoulders. But Caleb's urgency was contagious, his fear a mirror to my own. "We stick to the stream," I said, keeping my voice low. "It'll mask our tracks, maybe throw off the dogs." He gave a sharp nod, and we moved, staying low, the stream's icy water soaking our boots. The moonlight was our only guide, casting long shadows that seemed to twist and shift with every step. I kept glancing back, half expecting headlights to pierce the darkness, but the forest held its secrets close. As we pushed forward, Caleb's story unfolded in hushed fragments. He told me about Ryan's family old money, deep roots in their town, and a rigid belief that love like theirs was a stain to be scrubbed clean. They locked him in his room for days, Caleb said, his voice shaking with anger. Tried to pray it out of him. When that didn't work, they came for me. I winced, imagining the scene. My own coming out had been painful, awkward dinners. My dad's clipped, "We'll talk later." That never happened, but it hadn't been violent. Caleb's world was different, harsher, and it made my chest ache to think of Ryan trapped in it. "Did you always know?" I asked, stepping over a fallen branch. "About yourself, I mean." Caleb hesitated, his breath visible in the cold air. "Not always. I tried to be what they wanted, played football, dated girls, went to church. But it was like wearing someone else's skin. Ryan, he made me see I didn't have to." His words hit me harder than I expected. I'd spent years trying to fit into Nashville's mold, dating women to keep the peace, hiding parts of myself to avoid the whispers. But out here, with Caleb, the weight of that pretense felt unbearable. We reached a clearing where the stream widened, the water glinting like a silver ribbon under the stars. I motioned for a pause, my legs burning from the pace. Caleb leaned against a tree, his face drawn, and for a moment, we just listened to the night. No engines, no dogs, just the soft rush of water and our own ragged breathing. "You're not like them," Caleb said suddenly, his eyes on me. "You could have sent me away, but you didn't." "Why?" I shrugged, uncomfortable under his gaze. "I know what it's like to feel like you're running from yourself. I couldn't let you do it alone." He studied me, like he was seeing me for the first time. "You're braver than you think, Ethan." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "I'm terrified right now." "Doesn't feel brave." "Brave isn't not being scared," he said. "It's doing something anyway." Before I could respond, a sharp crack echoed through the tree branch snapping, too loud to be an animal. Caleb's hand shot to my wrist, pulling me down into the underbrush. My heart pounded as we lay there, the damp earth cold against my skin. Voices followed, low and indistinct, but growing closer. Spread out, one said, gruff and commanding. He can't be far. Caleb's grip tightened, his eyes wide with panic. I pressed a finger to my lips, signaling silence, and pointed to the stream. If we could cross it, the water might throw off their scent trail. He nodded, and we crawled, inching toward the bank, the voices growing louder behind us. The water was freezing, biting through my clothes as we waded in, keeping low. My boots slipped on the rocks, but Caleb steadied me, his hand firm on my elbow. We reached the other side, scrambling up the bank and into the cover of dense ferns. The voices faded slightly, but the hum of an ATV roared to life, its headlights sweeping the clearing we'd just left. "They're circling," Caleb whispered, his breath warm against my ear. "We need to keep moving." We pushed deeper into the forest, the terrain growing steeper, the trees thicker. My lungs burned, but Caleb's determination kept me going. He moved like someone who'd learned to survive, each step deliberate, his eyes scanning the darkness for threats. I realized then how much he'd already endured and how much he was still willing to fight for. By the time we stopped again, the sky was lightening, a faint gray creeping through the canopy. We'd covered maybe half the distance to the ranger station, but exhaustion was setting in. My legs felt like lead, and Caleb's face was pale, his bruise stark against his skin. "We can't stop for long," he said, but his voice was hoarse, his body swaying slightly. "You need rest," I said, guiding him to sit against a boulder. "Just a few minutes. We'll make it." He didn't argue, which worried me more than anything. I dug into my pack, pulling out a protein bar and splitting it with him. As we ate in silence, I couldn't help but feel the weight of what we were doing, not just running, but fighting for something bigger. For Caleb, it was Ryan. For me, it was the chance to be more than the scared kid I'd been in Nashville. The forest was waking up now, birds stirring in the branches, but the peace felt fragile. Somewhere out there, Caleb's pursuers were closing in, and I knew we couldn't outrun them forever. But as I looked at Caleb, his eyes fixed on the horizon, I felt a spark of something new, hope. Maybe, or the beginning of something worth risking everything for. Dawn broke slowly, painting the forest in soft pinks and golds, but it brought no comfort. The air was thick with tension, every rustle of leaves a potential threat. Caleb and I moved faster now, driven by the knowledge that his pursuers were closing in. The ranger station was our only hope, but the miles ahead felt endless, each step heavier than the last. Caleb was quieter now, his energy fading, but his eyes burned with a resolve that kept me grounded. I'd never been the hero type back in Nashville. I'd always been the one to shrink back, to avoid conflict. But out here, with Caleb counting on me, I felt different. Stronger. Like I was finally stepping into the person I'd always wanted to be. "We're close," I said, checking the map on my phone, though the signal was spotty. "Maybe 3 miles now. We can do this." Caleb nodded, but his jaw was tight, his gaze darting to the trees. "They won't stop," he said. "Ryan's brother's theory, not just angry. They're obsessed. They think they're doing God's work." The bitterness in his voice made my stomach twist. I wanted to say something comforting, but words felt inadequate. Instead, I reached out, squeezing his shoulder. "We'll get you to Ryan," I said. "I promise." He looked at me, his expression softening for a moment. "You don't even know if you can keep that promise," he said, but there was no accusation in his tone, just a quiet gratitude. We kept moving, the forest growing denser, the trail narrowing to a barely visible path. My legs ached, my boots heavy with mud from the stream. But Caleb's presence pushed me forward. There was something about him, his quiet strength. His refusal to give up, that made me want to be better, braver. Then we heard it, the unmistakable bark of a dog. Sharp and close. Caleb froze, his hand grabbing mine. "They've got the dogs," he whispered, his voice trembling. "We're out of time." My heart raced as I scanned the trees, looking for an escape. The terrain was too steep to climb, and doubling back would lead us straight into them. "The ridge," I said, pointing to a rocky outcrop above us. "If we can get up there, we might see them coming." We scrambled up the slope, rocks slipping under our feet, the dog's barks growing louder. At the top, we crouched behind a boulder, peering down at the valley below. Two ATVs roared into view, their headlights cutting through the early morning mist. 3 men were with them, one holding a leash with 2 hounds straining against it. Even from this distance, their anger was palpable, their movements deliberate, predatory. Caleb's breath hitched. "That's them," he said, his voice barely audible. "The one in the red jacket, that's Aaron, Ryan's older brother." I studied the man, his broad frame and purposeful stride. He looked like someone who didn't just want to find Caleb, wanted to punish him. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to focus. "They haven't seen us yet," I said. "We need to keep moving. Stay out of sight." Caleb nodded, but his eyes were distant, like he was seeing something I couldn't. "I should have never left him," he said, his voice breaking. "Ryan's alone because of me." "You did what you had to," I said, my voice firm. "You're fighting for both of you now. Don't give up." He met my gaze, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just us 2 people caught in a storm, holding onto each other to keep from drowning. Then the dogs barked again, closer now, and we were running again, the ridge giving way to a steep descent. We moved as quietly as we could, but the forest seemed to conspire against us, every branch snapping underfoot, every stone shifting. My lungs burned, my body screaming for rest. But Caleb's determination kept me going. He was a step ahead, his movements fluid despite his exhaustion, like he'd been born to navigate this wild, unforgiving place. We reached a small cave, barely more than a hollow in the rock, and ducked inside to catch our breath. The air was damp and cool, the space cramped, but it felt like a sanctuary. Caleb leaned against the wall, his chest heaving, his eyes closed. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't want this for you." "Stop apologizing," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "I chose this. I'm here." He opened his eyes, looking at me like he was seeing me anew. "Why?" he asked, the question raw, unguarded. "Why risk this for a stranger?" I hesitated, my own reasons swirling in my head. "Because I know what it's like to feel alone. Because I'm tired of hiding. Because you make me want to be more than I am." But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I said, "Because it's right." He held my gaze, and for a moment, the cave felt smaller, the air charged with something unspoken. Then the dog's barks echoed again, shattering the moment. "They're too close," Caleb said, his voice steady now. "We need to split up." "No," I said, the word out before I could think. "We stay together." "They'll catch us both," he argued. "If I draw them off, you can get to the ranger station. Call for help." I shook my head, my jaw tight. "I'm not leaving you. We're stronger together." Caleb looked like he wanted to argue, but something in my expression stopped him. He nodded, a silent agreement, and we slipped out of the cave, moving deeper into the forest. The ranger station was close now. I could feel it, but so were Caleb's pursuers, their dogs baying like hounds of hell. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing. I wasn't letting Caleb face it alone. The forest was a maze of shadows and sound, the dogs' barks echoing like a warning drum. Caleb and I moved faster, our breaths ragged. The ranger station so close I could almost taste it. But the terrain was brutal, roots snagging our feet, branches clawing at our faces. My pack felt like it weighed 100 pounds, but I didn't dare drop it. Not now. Caleb was a step ahead, his eyes scanning the trees, his body tense like a coiled spring. "We're almost there," he said, his voice low but steady. "I can see the ridge where the station should be." I nodded, too winded to respond. The map on my phone had died an hour ago, its battery drained, but Caleb seemed to know these woods by instinct. I trusted him, more than I'd trusted anyone in a long time. That thought alone was enough to keep me moving, even as my legs screamed for rest. Then, a shout cut through the air, sharp and angry. "Caleb, you can't run forever." It was Aaron, Ryan's brother, his voice carrying a venom that made my skin crawl. The dogs' barks grew frantic, their handlers close behind. They were gaining, and fast. Caleb's face paled, but he didn't stop. "Keep going," he said, grabbing my arm and pulling me toward a narrow path that dipped into a ravine. "They're trying to flush us out." We slid down the slope, dirt and leaves cascading around us. The ravine was steep, its walls lined with jagged rocks, but it offered cover. We crouched low, our breaths loud in the confined space. Above us, the ATVs roared, their engines a constant threat. I could hear the men shouting, their words indistinct but filled with rage. "They're not giving up," I whispered, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Caleb's eyes met mine, fierce and unyielding. "Neither are we," he said. "Ryan's waiting for me. I won't let them win." His words ignited something in me, a fire I hadn't known I had. I'd spent so long running from my own battles, hiding from the world's judgment. But here, with Caleb, I felt like I was finally standing up. For him, for Ryan, for myself. We crept along the ravine, the walls shielding us from view. The ranger station couldn't be more than a mile away now, but the terrain was slowing us down, and the dogs were relentless. Their barks were closer, their handlers' voices sharper. I could feel the noose tightening, the weight of their hatred pressing in. Then Caleb stopped, his hand on my chest, his eyes wide. "Listen," he whispered. I strained my ears, catching a faint, rhythmic thumping. Not an ATVA helicopter. My heart leapt. "The Rangers?" I asked, hope flaring. "Maybe," Caleb said, but his voice was cautious. "Or it could be them. Aaron's family has money, connections. They could have called in favors." The possibility hit like a punch. If they had a helicopter, we were out of options. On foot, in the open, we'd be easy to spot. "We need to move faster," I said, pulling Caleb forward. "If it's Rangers, we need to be at the station. If it's not, we'll deal with it." We climbed out of the ravine, the forest opening into a clearing that left us exposed. The helicopter's thump grew louder, its shadow flickering over the trees. I grabbed Caleb's hand, pulling him toward the tree line, but before we could reach it, a spotlight cut through the dawn, pinning us in place. "Caleb." Aaron's voice boomed, amplified by a megaphone. "You're only making this harder." Caleb froze, his hand tightening in mine, I could feel his fear, his resolve wavering. Don't listen to him, I said, my voice urgent. He's trying to break you. Keep moving. He nodded, but his steps were slower now, his body trembling. The helicopter hovered above, its light blinding. I shielded my eyes, scanning for a way out, but the clearing was too open, the trees too far. Then I saw a narrow trail leading up the ridge, barely visible in the undergrowth. There, I said, pointing. It's our only shot. We ran, the spotlight chasing us, Aaron's voice relentless. You can't hide, Caleb. We'll find you, and that kid with you. The mention of me sent a chill down my spine. They knew I was helping him now, which made me a target too. But instead of fear, I felt a surge of defiance. Let them come. I wasn't backing down. The trail was steep, slick with dew, but we pushed on, the helicopter's roar fading slightly as we reached the ridge. Below us, the ranger station came into view, a small cabin with a radio tower, its lights a beacon in the gray dawn. My heart soared, but the dogs' barks were closer now, their handlers crashing through the underbrush. We're almost there, I said, my voice hoarse. Just a little farther. Caleb nodded, but his face was pale, his breath shallow. If we don't make it, he said, his voice breaking, tell Ryan I tried. Tell him I love him. You'll tell him yourself, I said, grabbing his arm and pulling him forward. We're not done yet. The station was so close now, its door in sight, but the dogs were on us, their snarls filling the air. I turned, my knife in hand, ready to fight if I had to. Caleb stood beside me, his own resolve hardening. Whatever came next, we'd face it together, two strangers who'd become something more, bound by a fight for love, for freedom, for the right to be who we were. The ranger station was a silhouette against the rising sun, so close I could see the grain of its wooden walls. But the dogs were closer, their snarls ripping through the morning air, their handlers' shouts hot on our heels. Caleb's hand was still in mine, his grip fierce, like he was anchoring himself to this moment, to me. Keep going, I shouted, my voice raw as we sprinted toward the cabin. The helicopter's spotlight had lost us in the trees, but the dogs were relentless, their barks a promise of violence. My legs burned, my lungs screaming, but the sight of the station kept me moving. We were so close, so damn close. Caleb stumbled, his foot catching on a root, and I hauled him up, my arm around his waist. Don't stop, I said, my voice a growl. We're almost there. He nodded, his face pale but determined, and we pushed forward, the station's door now just yards away. I could see the radio tower, its antenna glinting in the dawn, a lifeline to help. But before we could reach it, a figure stepped out from the trees, blocking our path. Aaron. He was taller than I'd imagined, his red jacket stark against the forest's greens and browns. His face was hard, his eyes cold, like he'd already decided our fate. Caleb, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You're done running. Caleb froze, his hand tightening in mine. I could feel his fear, but also his defiance, a fire that hadn't gone out. Leave us alone, Aaron, he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his body. This isn't about you. It's about family, Aaron spat, stepping closer. Behind him, two other men emerged, one holding the dog's leashes, the other gripping a rifle. You're tearing us apart. Ryan's confused. And you're the poison. I stepped in front of Caleb, my knife raised, though it felt pitiful against the rifle. Back off, I said, my voice shaking but firm. He's not yours to control. Aaron's eyes flicked to me, a sneer curling his lip. And who the hell are you? Some drifter he dragged into this mess. I'm someone who's not letting you hurt him, I said, my heart pounding. I didn't know where the words came from, but they felt right, like they'd been waiting to be said. Aaron laughed, a cold, hollow sound. You're in over your head, kid. Walk away, and maybe you won't get hurt. I glanced at Caleb, his eyes locked on Aaron, his jaw tight. I could see the weight of years in that look, years of hiding, of fighting, of loving someone in a world that didn't allow it. I wasn't walking away. Not now. Not ever. The dogs lunged, their handlers struggling to hold them back. Caleb grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the station. Go, he shouted, and we ran, Aaron's shouts chasing us. We reached the door, my hands fumbling with the latch. It was locked, but the wood was old, weathered. I slammed my shoulder against it, once, twice, until it gave way, splintering under the force. We stumbled inside, slamming the door behind us and shoving a table against it. The cabin was small, cluttered with maps and equipment, a radio humming faintly on a desk. Caleb lunged for it, twisting dials, his hands shaking. Mayday, Mayday, he said, his voice urgent. This is an emergency. We need help at the Northridge station. Static crackled. Then a voice came through, calm but alert. This is Smoky Mountain Ranger Station. Identify yourself and state your emergency. Before Caleb could respond, the door shuttered, Aaron's fist pounding against it. Caleb, open this damn door. The dog's barks were deafening now, their claws scratching at the wood. I grabbed a chair, wedging it under the doorknob, my heart racing. Keep talking, I told Caleb, my voice tight. Get them here fast. Caleb nodded, his voice steady as he spoke into the radio. This is Caleb Monroe. We're being pursued by armed men. They've got dogs, ATVs, maybe a helicopter. We need immediate assistance. The ranger's voice crackled back. Copy that. We're dispatching a team now. Hold tight. The door shook again, harder this time, the table scraping against the floor. Aaron's voice was a snarl. You think you can hide in there? We'll drag you out. Caleb's face was pale, but his eyes were fierce. They're coming, he said, more to himself than to me. We just need to hold them off. I scanned the room, my mind racing. There was a back window, small but big enough to climb through. If they break in, we go out there, I said, pointing. We can lose them in the trees. Caleb nodded, but his gaze lingered on me, something unspoken passing between us. Ethan, he said, his voice soft but urgent. If we don't make it, we will. I cut him off, my voice fierce. We're getting you to Ryan. I promised. The door splintered, Aaron's shoulder breaking through. I grabbed Caleb, pulling him toward the window. We climbed through just as the door gave way, the dog's snarls filling the cabin. We hit the ground running, the forest swallowing us once more. The helicopter was back, its spotlight sweeping the trees. But we were faster now, fueled by desperation. The ranger station was behind us, but help was coming. I had to believe that. Caleb's hand found mine again, his grip a lifeline in the chaos. We're not done yet, I said, my voice a vow. Not even close. The forest was a blur, branches snapping against my face as we ran, the helicopter's roar a constant threat above. Caleb's hand was slick with sweat in mine, but his grip never faltered. We were out of the ranger station, back in the wild, with Aaron and his men close behind. The dog's barks were fainter now, but the danger felt closer, like the air itself was charged with their hatred. "We need cover," I panted, pulling Caleb toward a dense thicket. The trees here were older, their branches interlocking like a fortress. We ducked low, crawling through the underbrush, the helicopter's spotlight missing us by inches. My heart pounded, but Caleb's steady breathing beside me kept me focused. "They won't stop," he said, his voice low, almost resigned. "Aaron's too stubborn. He thinks he's saving Ryan by doing this." "He's not saving anyone," I said, my voice sharp. "He's just scared of what he doesn't understand." Caleb looked at me, his dark eyes catching the faint light filtering through the trees. "You sound like you've been there," he said softly. I nodded, my throat tight. "My dad, he didn't get it either. Still doesn't. But he never came after me with dogs and guns." Caleb's expression softened, a flicker of understanding passing between us. "I'm sorry," he said. "No one should have to fight for who they are." The words hit me hard, stirring something deep. I'd spent so long hiding, apologizing for existing, that Caleb's acceptance felt like a lifeline. But there was no time to dwell on it. The helicopter circled back, its light sweeping closer, and we moved again, deeper into the thicket. We found a shallow cave, more a crevice than a shelter, and squeezed inside. The space was tight, our shoulders pressed together, our breaths mingling in the damp air. Outside, the forest was alive with sound dogs, shouts, the relentless thump of the helicopter. But in here, it was just us, two people caught in a storm bigger than either of us. "Do you think the Rangers are coming?" Caleb asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "They have to be," I said, though doubt gnawed at me. The radio call had been brief, the connection shaky. If help didn't come soon, we'd be out of options. Caleb leaned his head back against the rock, his eyes closing for a moment. "I keep seeing Ryan's face," he said. "The way he looked when I left. Like I was abandoning him." "You didn't abandon him," I said, my voice firm. "You're fighting for him. That's more than most people would do." He opened his eyes, looking at me with an intensity that made my chest ache. "You're fighting for me," he said. "Why?" I hesitated, the truth pressing against my lips. "Because you remind me of who I could be. Because I'm tired of being afraid. Because I see you, and I want to be seen too." But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I said, "Because no one should have to run alone." He reached out, his hand brushing mine, a fleeting touch that felt like a spark. "Thank you, Ethan," he said, his voice thick. "For everything." Before I could respond, a dog's bark split the air, too close. We froze, our bodies tense, as footsteps crunched nearby. "They're in here somewhere," Aaron's voice growled, low and menacing. "Spread out." Caleb's hand tightened on mine, his eyes wide with fear but also determination. "If they find us," he whispered, "promise me you'll keep going. Get to Ryan." "No," I said, my voice fierce. "We're both getting out of this. Together." The footsteps grew closer, the dog's snarls vibrating through the air. I clutched my knife, its weight a small comfort, though I knew it wouldn't be enough. Then, a new sound, a distant rumble, different from the helicopter. Sirens. Caleb's eyes lit up, hope flaring. "The Rangers," he breathed. The sirens grew louder, cutting through the forest's chaos. Aaron's shouts turned frantic, his men calling to each other as the dog's barks shifted. Confused, I peered through the crevice, catching glimpses of flashing lights in the distance. Help was coming, but Aaron wasn't giving up. "We need to move," I said, pulling Caleb to his feet. "If we can get to the Rangers, we're safe." We slipped out of the crevice, staying low, the sirens of beacon guiding us. The forest was alive with movement, now Rangers shouting, Aaron's men scrambling, the helicopter banking away. We ran, the ground uneven beneath us, Caleb's hand in mine a steady anchor. We broke through the trees into a clearing, where 2 Ranger trucks were parked, their lights cutting through the dawn. A Ranger in a green uniform saw us, raising a hand. "Over here," he shouted. We sprinted toward him, my legs burning, my heart soaring. But before we could reach him, a figure lunged from the trees. Aaron, his face twisted with rage. He grabbed Caleb, yanking him back, a knife glinting in his hand. I didn't think. I tackled Aaron, my momentum sending us both to the ground. The knife skidded away, and I pinned him, my fists clenched. "Stay down," I shouted, my voice raw. Rangers swarmed us, pulling Aaron off, cuffing his wrists as he cursed and struggled. Caleb was on his knees, gasping, but safe. I reached for him, helping him up, our eyes locking. "We made it," I said, my voice shaking with relief. He nodded, tears in his eyes. "Because of you," he said. The Rangers took Aaron and his men into custody, their dogs leashed and quieted. The helicopter was gone, its threat dissolved. As the adrenaline faded, I felt the weight of what we'd done, what we'd survived. Caleb and I stood together, battered but unbroken, 2 strangers who'd become something more in the face of a fight neither of us had chosen. The ranger station was a hive of activity, Rangers barking orders, radios crackling, and Aaron's men being led away in cuffs. Caleb and I sat on a bench outside, wrapped in blankets, our hands still trembling from the chase. The morning sun was higher now, casting a warm glow over the Smoky Mountains, but the chill of the night lingered in my bones. Caleb was quiet, his eyes fixed on the horizon, the bruise on his jaw a stark reminder of what he'd endured. I wanted to say something, to fill the silence, but words felt too small for what we'd been through. Instead, I reached out, my hand brushing his. He didn't pull away. "You okay?" I asked finally, my voice soft. He nodded, but his eyes were wet, his breath uneven. "I keep thinking about Ryan," he said. "What if he's not okay? What if they hurt him?" "The Rangers are on it," I said, repeating what the lead officer had told us. They'd contacted local police in Caleb's town, sending a unit to check on Ryan. "They'll find him. He's going to be okay." Caleb looked at me, his expression raw, vulnerable. "I couldn't have done this without you, Ethan. You didn't have to, but you stayed." I shrugged, a small smile tugging at my lips. "You unzipped my tent, remember? Kind of hard to stay out of it after that." He laughed, a soft, broken sound that warmed the air between us. "Yeah, sorry about that. Worst introduction ever." "Best one I've had in a while," I said, and I meant it. Meeting Caleb, running with him, fighting for him, it had changed something in me. I wasn't the same person who'd driven out to these woods to hide. I was someone who could stand up, who could fight, who could be seen. The ranger in charge, a woman named Officer Daniels, approached us, her face kind but serious. "We've got a lead on Ryan," she said. "He's safe, at a friend's house. Police are bringing him here. Caleb's breath caught, his hand tightening on mine. He's okay? He asked, his voice trembling. Daniels nodded. He's shaken up, but unharmed. He's been worried about you. Tears spilled down Caleb's cheeks, and he didn't bother wiping them away. I squeezed his hand, my own eyes stinging. Told you, I said softly. You're going to see him. He nodded, unable to speak, and we sat there, the weight of the moment settling over us. The forest was quiet now, the chaos of the chase replaced by a fragile peace. I thought about Nashville, about the life I'd left behind, and realized I didn't want to go back, not to the hiding, the pretending, the half-life I'd been living. An hour later, a police car pulled up, and Ryan stepped out. He was just like the photo slide, with messy blonde hair and eyes that seemed to carry the weight of the world. Caleb was on his feet in an instant, running to him, pulling him into a hug so fierce it looked like they might never let go. I stayed back, giving them their moment, but Ryan's eyes met mine over Caleb's shoulder. He mouthed a quiet, "Thank you," and I nodded, my throat tight. Watching them, I felt a pang, not jealousy, but longing. For a love like that. For a life where I could be that open, that free. Caleb turned, waving me over. Ethan, he said, his voice thick with emotion. This is Ryan. Ryan extended a hand, his smile warm but tired. I owe you everything, he said. Caleb told me what you did. I shook his hand, feeling oddly shy. Just glad you're both okay, I said. We talked for a while, the three of us, as the Rangers wrapped up their work. Caleb and Ryan were heading to a safe house, somewhere Aaron's family couldn't reach them. The police had enough evidence to keep Aaron and his men locked up for a while. Assault, stalking, illegal weapons. It wasn't the end of their fight, but it was a start. As they prepared to leave, Caleb pulled me aside. You're not just a stranger anymore, he said, his voice low. Your family. The word hit me hard, filling a hole I hadn't realized was there. You too, I said, my voice rough. Take care of each other. He hugged me, quick but fierce, and then they were gone, climbing into the Ranger's truck, their hands entwined. I watched them go, the sun warm on my face, the forest alive with possibility. I didn't go back to Nashville right away. Instead, I stayed in the mountains for a few more days, hiking the trails, breathing the free air. Caleb's fight had become mine, not just for him, but for myself. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was Ethan Harper, and I was done running. When I finally drove out of the Smokies, my phone buzzed with a text from Caleb, a photo of him and Ryan, smiling in a new city, a new life. Underneath, just 2 words, thank you. I smiled, the road stretching out before me. For the first time in years, I felt like I was driving toward something, not away.